Airbags, collision sensors, anti-lock brakes, these technologies have made automobiles safer.
But here's something you may not have thought about. How well does your vehicle protect you from getting cancer? Well, that's something the Fox 9 investigators have been looking into. Here's Jeff Ballion.
To drive Minnesota in the summer is to hurry up and wait. As you sit and steam in traffic, here's something to think about.
In the United States, you're more likely to have precancers and skin cancers on the left side of your body, just from our time spent in the vehicles driving.
What is it about driving that puts you at risk of skin cancer?
I had a biopsy in my mid-back.
The same thing as hanging at the beach. Ultraviolet radiation from the sun.
An hour out there.
Right.
It's kind of like sitting in your yard for an hour, but don't feel like it because you're in the car.
So when you're in the car, normally, do you have any kind of sunscreen on?
No.
Nicole Lucas, whose family has a history of skin cancer,
Perfect.
had never given any thought
None.
to her UV exposure while driving with the windows up. She just assumed she was protected by her car's glass.
We're going to measure the intensity of the UV.
But a simple test shows otherwise.
This is a typical clear, factory clear glass.
Jane Chow is a 3M scientist and an expert on materials that block ultraviolet radiation.
We'll calibrate again.
This little device will give us a general idea of how much UV is seeping into our news truck at this moment.
This one reads 2.3.
Only about 3% is able to penetrate the windshield.
And now with the window up,
But a check of the driver's window reveals a surprising result. About 30% of the UV radiation is able to pass through.
But there's a big difference between the windshield and the side window.
yes, that is correct.
Doctors say to limit possible skin damage, you should try and keep your exposure as close to zero as possible.
There's enough of that cumulative time that we incur just in our cars that, make it more likely to get the skin cancers on the left.
Is what we found in our vehicle typical? We're going to do some random sampling.
Can we check your car's UV protection level? Let's find somebody over here.
All right.
The windshield of the Mattel family's minivan is blocking 97% of the UV rays, similar to our news truck.
That's very typical because windshield has UV protection already built into the safety glass.
But the meter shows the side window is allowing more than 60% of the
So
ultraviolet
this one right here is
radiation to
reading
pass through.
63%.
That's
So
twice
which
the
means that
level
it's
of our Fox
blocking
9 vehicle.
37.
You just saw this little experiment.
Right?
What did you take away from it?
That you should still wear sunscreen even if you're in the car.
As we checked UV levels
Okay, it's reading about 30% with the window up.
in car after car,
And right now it's reading at about 40%.
a clear pattern emerged.
You're in a profession where you're in the sun all the time driving. Can we check your windows?
No matter the make or model, side windows
It reads 30% transmission.
typically
53%.
don't offer the same
So which
UV
means
protection from the sun as windshields do.
You gonna change anything?
Oh, I probably will. I'll start putting the sunscreen on my arms as well.
There's a whole lot of exposure that still happens.
Maybe.
Sunscreen is one option, but if you don't want to lather up every time you get behind the wheel, you might want to consider putting tinting on the side windows.
So the meter reads 1.8.
Lowest we've seen.
Yep. And that's because I have window film on.
The films are made by a variety of companies, including 3M, and usually cost several $100s to install.
I spend an hour at least a day in the car, kind of to and from work.
Dr. Larson is a firm believer in window tinting. He has it on his car. He's even asked employers of some of his skin cancer patients who drive a lot for work to add UV protection to their vehicles. All because skin cancer is the most common form of cancer in the United States. The numbers on the rise over the last 30 years. I'm Fox 9 investigator Jeff Ballion.
And in case you're wondering, most glass used in sunroofs does have some tinting. According to an industry trade group, sunroof glass typically blocks about 90% of the UV rays.